Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare?
I'm going to give the people what they want. Sensation, horror, shock. Send them out in the streets to tell their friends how wonderful it is to be scared to death.
I see you've come back for more. If you're new here, buckle up. And thank you all for joining me today. My name is DeRay, aka Rainbow Fright, lover of all things dark, creepy, and weird. And today, I'll be talking about the House of Wax movies from 1953 and 2005. The 1953 version is itself a remake of the film Mystery of the Wax Museum, but today I'll only be talking about the later films. The 2005 film is only a loose remake of the previous remake, but it pays homage to Andrew Tito's film in so many ways, and it is still fun to compare the two. And this month, I'm joined by another very special guest. I'm excited to finally have him on my channel for the first time, and it certainly won't be the last. Please join me in welcoming filmmaker and lover of gore Tiago of Royal Horror. Tiago, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today to chat about wax, fires, and death.
Thank you so much for having me, and it is a pleasure to be part of this series on your channel, and I'm glad that we finally had the time to make this talk, this like between YouTubers kind of talk. So I'm pleased to be here with you and with everyone watching this video.
Yes, thank you again. Well, before we jump into our conversation about these two films, here's a brief synopsis for both, and remember, Stardust, there will be spoilers. The 1953 film is directed by Andrew Tito and stars Phyllis Kirk, Carolyn Jones, Paul Picerni, and Vincent Price, who plays renowned sculptor Professor Henry Jared, a talented sculptor whose wax museum is set on fire by his greedy business partner for insurance money. Jared survives, but is left disfigured, and he secretly begins creating new wax figures using the bodies of people he murders, encasing them in wax. Sue Allen becomes suspicious when she notices that a statue in Jared's new museum resembles her missing friend, Kathy. In the end, Sue discovers Jared's horrific secret, and during a confrontation, his wax mask is ripped off, revealing his true face before he falls into a vat of boiling wax. In the remake directed by collet-serra, a group of friends on a road trip stumble upon a seemingly abandoned town with a wax museum full of disturbingly lifelike figures. As they explore, they realize the figures are actually the wax-coated corpses of previous visitors, killed by two brothers who run the museum. One by one, the friends are hunted and killed, with their bodies turned into wax sculptures. In the end, the surviving pair, Carly and her brother Nick, fight back and escape as the entire wax museum melts and collapses, killing the murderous brothers inside. It stars Alicia Cuthbert, Jared Padalecki, Chad Michael Murray, John Abrahams, Robert Ri'chard, and of course, Paris Hilton. All right, so Tiago, which movie did you see first, and what were your initial thoughts?
So the first film that I watched, I actually have it here with me.
Ooh, nice.
The remake. I've watched the movie many times. I've watched the movie since I was a child. It's one of the very first horror movies that I watched. One of the very first gory films, slasher films. So I've been watching this movie for like forever. And my quick thoughts for this film is that I absolutely love it. For me, it's very underrated. I think it's the perfect definition of early 2000s slasher vibes. I also think that the whole pre-production and production value of this film is incredible, because if you see the special features, which I've done many times, mostly everything is practical. So I really appreciate the production value of this film. I think this film is iconic overall, and yeah, overall I do love this film a lot.
Yeah, so I definitely saw the remake first as well. And I saw it way back in the day. And I remember really enjoying it. I remember loving the gore and all of the kills. And, you know, when I started my channel, it kind of came up in different discussions. And I remembered I hadn't seen it in so long. And I was just afraid of it becoming one of those films that I liked as a kid. And then as an adult, I wasn't going to like anymore. So when I rewatched it, I was like, please let me still like this movie. And sure enough, after watching it, I'm like, man, you know what? This one still holds up. Why are so many people talking so much shit about this movie? I mean, I get why you would talk some kind of shit, but to say that it's just terrible and to completely write it off and to never want to watch it again is just a
No,
little strange. And it's a very unique type of film. Yes, it's your typical slasher film. And, we had a whole bunch of remakes that came out in the early 2000s, and there were a bunch of slashers, and it kind of stood out from those other films, though, a little bit. And like you said, it's completely different from the original as far as what the story is and all of that. But there are still these little things that pay homage to the original
the
film,
original.
which
Yeah.
is really special. But yeah, I love every single death in this movie. They're just a whole lot of fun. And I'm so glad that I revisited this one. So what did you feel then about the first film? Was this a first time watch for you, and how did you like it?
With the original film, which I also have this
Yeah.
collection,
So
the
cool.
30th edition. Um, I've seen this movie less times than the remake, but I've seen it a few times. My first time watch of the original was like in 2020, but I've seen this movie quite a few times, at least 5 times or something. I think it's one of the greatest films ever made, and I'm not even exaggerating because we need to think about that this movie came out in the 1950s. Like this movie came out before classics such as Texas Chainsaw, Rosemary's Baby, Halloween. Like this movie is one of the very first slasher films, even though it's not a slasher, but the idea and the concept of it really paved the way for what we have right now as
Sure.
horror fans and the horror genre. I think the villain, he is incredible, and I think he's underrated when it comes to horror villains because I really love why he became a villain. He was not born as a villain; it was because of something that was done to him. And I think that whole concept to come out in the 50s, I think that was incredible because I haven't seen many 50s films, but I've seen a few, and most of them are like creatures or like monsters, like Monsters Universe or paranormal here and there. But this kind of film, having a serial killer as being so unique, like he's not a creepy guy, he's not in the forest, he's an artist. And I think that was incredible. Having the opportunity to watch this movie in Blu-ray 73 years after, that's insane to me because the fact that we can watch this piece of art so many years later, so crisp, so smooth, so real. I think that's the power of cinema and the power of horror. It's not like this movie is scary or disturbing, but it did get to me when it comes to how much they did with so little.
Yeah.
And even though this movie is not graphic, there is no graphic kills, but the concept of it makes you think, or the ways that Vincent Price did it in the film. Yeah, I really appreciate this film for what it is, for what it has done for the horror genre. It's near a perfect film for me. I love the practical effects, especially when Vince reveals his actual face, and the whole storyline overall. Like, how you think the villain is someone else just because we have Vincent Price with his normal face, so we wouldn't expect him to be the bad guy from previous scenes. So I like how the movie makes you think, is that accomplished or what's happening here? But yeah, I like the crime aspect of it because this is
Yeah.
an incredible crime kind of film.
Yes. The 1953 version is just so beautifully done. I like every frame in that movie, and the coloring is just beautiful. And like you said, the costume design is beautiful. It's a period piece, so it doesn't take place in the 50s. So seeing the clothes and just how beautiful and extravagant they were, when we were watching the best friend Kathy get dressed, it's
Yeah,
just so much fun seeing the layers going onto her. And yeah, while this is your classic horror, and it's not necessarily categorized as a slasher, but it definitely is, because he's going around killing folks, but in a unique way where, he's making it look like they did it to themselves. When he kills his business partner, it's just the creativity makes you giggle. And I love that. And seeing Vincent Price in this role, this is a role that revitalized his career. And it was one of the first roles where we see him do some fight choreography. And it was actually pretty good. in the scene where, the business partner sets the wax museum on fire, my jaw literally dropped. I did not expect that whatsoever. And it looks terrifying. And I feel for Vincent, because you have this man who loves his work. He loves his figures and he's passionate about it. And you see him just trying to put these fires out that are set all over the place, and it's tragic. And yeah, after that scene, we're like, what the hell happened to him? And then he pops up later looking pretty fine, just in a wheelchair. And you're like, what the hell is going on? So it's a bit of a psychological thriller too. And I love that about a film from the 50s that also has this monster at the end as well. So speaking about the villains in both films, they both play a pivotal role. And how would you compare the villain performances in each film? And is one more terrifying than the other for you?
I think the villain in the original film and the villains in the remake, I think the two brothers in the remake are the definition of Vincent Price in the original. I think the killer, the evil guy in the original, has a bit of both from the remake. In the remake, we have the siblings, and one of them is the sculptor, he's the artist, he's the spy guy, he's the one that respects his figures, he's passionate about this. You can tell the amount of work that goes through everything that he has done for this museum. So to that kind of side, we can see that in Vincent, in the original. And with the other sibling, he is the psychopath. He is the one that wants to control like the mind from his brother. He is the one that's more of a killer because, even though the other brother is also a killer because, he kills Paris Hilton and mostly every character. I do believe that if he wouldn't have been controlled by his brother, maybe he would have been just another artist. I don't think he would have maybe become this killer.
Yeah.
He became this killer because of his brother. And so I do prefer the killers in the remake because obviously I grew up with them. I've seen them many times. I do prefer the kills, the way they kill, the way they chase. And we have the iconic scene where he's with the knife trying to get Paris. And that's as scary as hell. That's still there when the knife goes through her feet. That's impressive. And with the original Vincent, he does it all. He is the one that's doing his mastermind plan. He's the one that's doing the killings, the chasings. So I do appreciate both, but I do prefer the remake killers just because they are scarier or more sinister.
What'd I tell you, huh? And your work more real now? Ma will be proud. Yeah. She'd be real proud.
Yeah, I do like the villains in the remake as well, because I loved just how crazy Vincent is, because he's just living a normal life with all these wax figures and wax buildings, and he seems to be well adjusted at first glance. But no, we soon find out that he's just a murderous asshole, psychopath. And yeah, chopping off fingers, killing folks one by one, controlling his twin brother who really doesn't want to be doing any of this. But despite all of that, I do have to say I would prefer Vincent Price, just because it's Vincent Price for one. And then for 1953, that practical effects makeup that he had, I just still am in awe because it was just so good. And reading about when he wasn't able to go into certain places on set because it frightened people so much was just really cool to learn. And it's fun how they do these tricks in the 50s, because you can get away with a lot with older films, because obviously if that's how he really looked, his mask would be much bigger, but they were able to get away with just using his normal face and then just use the cutaways when his face broke away. Just smart and just cheap and smart, but very effective anyway. I loved that. And just seeing him in this role, and then knowing that this is what kind of catapulted him into like another type of villain, because he was kind of always in like horror and spooky movies before this, but after House of Wax is when he really became like the the scary, horrible villain that you just don't want to cross whatsoever. And it was just really fun seeing him be this guy and just have his creativity and how he captured people and brought them to his new museum to encapsulate them. Loved it.
That look of horror spoils your lovely face. What if it should show even through the wax?
In talking about character development, how do you feel about the character development in both? And in the second one, in the remake, the 2005 film in particular, do you think there was too much build-up and background?
I think they had enough build-up because obviously you need to like the characters, especially in slashers, so you need to spend time with them. I like how all of them are so different, especially with our siblings, the good guys. The brother, he was the bad guy in the family, and the girl, she was the good guy in the family. So I like that kind of interaction because it gives personality to the characters, and I want to fall in love with the characters. I want to root for the characters. I bought that they were friends. I bought that they love hanging out with each other. The character development with all of them, I think, is very strong, especially with the good siblings, because at first they didn't like each other so much, but as the movie was progressing and as Carly was in danger, the other brother, he started to care more about her. He started to try to defend her, and at the end of the movie, we get to see them like fighting against the villains, and I just love that at the end of the movie they both survived.
Yeah, definitely. You know, like you said, it's a 2-hour long film, and we hang out with them for about 45 minutes before anything really interesting happens in the wax neighborhood that they end up in. And at first, initially I want to think like, oh my gosh, this is too much setup. Why are we hanging out with them for so long? But in watching it again after so many years, I'm like, but it's actually fun because I like all of these actors in real life, and these characters are just fun, and they're enjoying each other. They all have really good chemistry. Although the brother and sister have some kind of like weird romantic chemistry on screen.
Yeah,
it's like, because at first I'm like, those eyes are kind of bedroomy. What are you doing with those eyes there?
Yeah.
But I did like seeing their relationship evolve because he wants to claim that he's the evil twin and she's the good twin, just because he's getting in trouble with the law a lot. But then we find out that like the last big thing he did wasn't even his fault. His friend was actually the one who stole the car, yada yada yada. All this kind of like too much, but it's like, if you're really invested in the movie, it's kind of interesting to have that little tidbit there. But I think had they cut some of it out, like maybe 15 minutes, it wouldn't have hurt the film too much. But again, it was still enjoyable just to kind of hang out with this group of people. And so with the character development in the original, I thought was also done really well, because we have our lead, our final girl, who we don't realize is our lead until after her best friend Kathy dies. And Kathy is played by Carolyn Jones, who we know goes on to become Morticia Addams in the Addams Family series, which was just cool to see her in this film, in this role, playing a bit of an asshole herself, a greedy little asshole herself, because she's with the business partner who's a greedy asshole. And she's like, oh, how much money are you going to get? Oh, well, we can go, get our marriage license and lock this down so I can be rich.
Was there any insurance on the wax museum?
Yeah. The insurance company insists upon proof of my partner's death.
Yes. They always want a court.
Even though you could tell they really don't even love each other, they're just with each other to benefit themselves. And then when he's killed by Vincent Price's character, she's laughing about it and giggling like, oh, ha, 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 whatever, he's dead, on to the next more rich guy, And so when she dies, it's kind of like, cool, we got the greedy business partner out the way, and this bitch is gone, fuck her, And then we shift the female lead on over to Sue Allen, who is an amazing talent, and I just love her dedication to uncovering the truth. She sees this Joan of Arc wax figure, and she just knows deep down in her heart that it's her friend Kathy, even though it seems impossible. But she's not letting up, and she's going to keep pressing and get to the bottom of things. So seeing her kind of progress into, somebody who's standing up for herself. Although she doesn't necessarily physically fight our villain in the original, she ends up being strapped down and has to be rescued, unfortunately, compared to our final girl in the original, Carly, who fights back for real and gets physical with the villains and takes part in destroying, what they created, their museum. So yeah, I feel like in both films they did really good in building these characters and making us feel for them and root for them, even though in the original I'm rooting for our final girl, Sue Allen, but I'm also rooting for Vincent Price at the same time because I just feel so bad for him. And at least in a lot of the times he's killing bad folks. So screw it, right? Paris being in this film was just all the rage when the film came out. So how do you feel her performance was handled, and what impact do you think her celebrity status had on the film's reception?
With Paris Hilton, I've never really cared about her. I don't know her. I've only known her from this role and another film where she's like, I forgot the name, but it's about a cat in this town. And unpopular opinion, but I think her acting is actually great. Like, I don't think she did a bad acting, especially coming from someone that is not an actor. So yeah, she was fine. She played what she needed to play. I think she did a good job. I'm not disappointed. And yeah, overall, I think she deserves better in this film. But again, I don't really know much about Paris Hilton. I don't really care about knowing. I just know her from this. And I want to keep it that way.
Fair enough. Yes. Yeah, for me, I didn't take Paris Hilton seriously as an actor. I had seen her in The Simple Life, the reality show she had with Nicole Richie, where they just went around the United States just being dumb, basically. She's just a socialite, who just hops around to different things and it dabbles in a bunch of different things. But in watching her in this movie, I took her even more seriously. I took her seriously after watching this movie, though, because she did all the things that she needed to do, like you said, and she's not award winning or anything like that. But the shit that people were giving her, I think, was just a bit unfair. There was just no reason for that. So apparently the cast was built around her. She was cast first, and then they picked folks based off of, her and who she would work well with. Like we said before, like they just all had really good chemistry, especially her and her boyfriend, Robert Ri'chard. They were great together. So yeah, I feel like her kills is definitely one of the best kills just in slasher films in general. Yes. It's so fun seeing her head just slide down that pole. Yes, it is so good. Aside from moments that you've already mentioned, what other memorable moments were there for you in the original film?
One of my favorite aspects is New York as the usual location. We have Vincent Price running around the city, around buildings. He is falling down the stairs, trying to chase the main girl.
Yeah.
So those kind of sequences for me are one of the best aspects, especially because of the time that it came out in the 50s. I can only imagine how hard it was for the filmmakers of that era. Like those action sequences, you could tell that was their first take, because that whole action sequence where they're fighting each other, you could tell that was the first take. So that's really admirable.
Oh, yes. I also love that chase scene when Henry Jarrett is chasing Sue Allen through the streets. It lasts a long time, but I want every second of it. The darkness, the suspense, the music, the shadows. I love all of it. So yeah, when they're in the streets is a really great moment. And I do have to go back to the fire at the start of the film, which I just love. It's just also crazy to learn that there were 3 separate fires set on purpose for that scene, but they actually got out of control. And so when you see Vincent toward the end of that scene be a little bit frightened, that's his actual fear shining through, because he had to figure out how to get out of this fire that got out of control, essentially burned some of his eyebrows off. And of course, all of the wax figures were melting. So the director just kept the cameras rolling because, well, we're not going to spend more money on more wax figures. And so learning that, it's just crazy because for the remake, there was a candle in the soundstage that set the whole soundstage on fire. So they lost that whole studio and one person had to get treated for burns. Luckily, nobody else was hurt. But it's just crazy to learn that they also had an issue with fire and ended up getting sued by the folks who owned the studio. So both movies had this disaster go down, but for different reasons. But that's just so strangely coincidental. I loved learning that. All right. So what then would you give both films? What would you rate them out of 5 Rainbow Skulls?
So out of 5 Rainbow Skulls, the original, both films are 4.5 Rainbow Skulls.
Okay, nice.
Although I do prefer the remake, mostly because of nostalgia, because I've seen that movie so many times and I would continue to watch it so many times. The remake works better as a slasher, but I do think the original works better as a psychological kind of piece. But for me, they both stand out as near perfect films.
Nice. Awesome. Hell yeah. All right. Well, I would have to give the original 4.5 Rainbow Skulls out of 5. And I give the remake from 2005 4 Rainbow Skulls out of 5. That ending is amazing. I love that the director, like you said, decided to use mostly practical effects and he only used CGI when it added a little bit to the scene, but not to create it all together. And the fact that they used miniatures for a lot of the set design too was just super cool. So I'm glad I'm not giving the remake from 2005 a 2 or 2.5 like I thought I might have to, but no, this one definitely gets 4 Rainbow Skulls out of 5.
Okay.
Well, before we wrap this video up, do you want to let our fellow Stardust know what you've got going on over on your channel?
So over my channel, the main stuff that I do is movie reviews from new releases, from old releases. And with old releases, what I do is that I compare it to similar films. So, for example, I've compared Megan to Child's Play, the remake. So those kind of stuff. I also like to talk about sequels, like if there is only 2 films. For example, I talked about Wolf Creek, those 2 films, and I will be talking more about different kind of sequels. So like, I love doing deep dives from old films, from new films that I really, really love, and basically all of that. Again, short films and so on and so on. So my channel, like a lot of different kind of it's a mixed recipe, let's say, like different kind of stuff over there, horror and non-horror too.
Yes, I love it. Definitely check out his channel, Stardust. I'll have all the links down in the description for all of his socials. And if you like what you see, please give him a follow and subscribe. And yes, thank you again, Tiago. And we'll be doing this again very soon.
It will be amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It really was a pleasure. I love talking about these 2 films. So I'm so glad that you gave this idea. And yeah, I can't wait to do this in the future with different films, different topics. So thank you for you having me, and thank you for you guys too for watching this video. Really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Well, all right, Stardust. Peace.